All right, Shalom. First off, give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakar Kadash. The honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS. Salutes and honors to the elect, all the brothers across the four corners who are enduring in truth and sincerity, the women, the children, the confusion of faith who follow. So today we are going to go into the 6 Syrian wars. Okay. And Lord's will, this is an edifying video. I love going into history, so like I said, Lord's will, this is going to be a fun and edifying video. We are going to start off at Daniel's 11 and verse 4, and this is going into Alexander and his generals, and basically, the years after that. That's where the beef stems from in these Syrian wars. But let's let the scriptures and all the information come out. So this is Daniel 11 and 4. It says, "And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and divided towards the 4 winds." All right, and that he that is speaking of is Alexander the Greek, Alexander the so-called Great. It says, "And his kingdom shall be divided towards the 4 winds of heaven." All right, now that's speaking of his 4 generals. All right, he had 4 generals. He had Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. Those were his 4 generals. All right, and it speaks about that in First Maccabees, the 1st chapter, and the 7th verse. It says, "So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth." So it said that they put crowns in their heads, and their sons after them, and that's really what we're going to be going into. All those sons that put the crowns on their heads are the sons, mainly speaking of in the Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire. All right, they are the ones who went to war in these Syrian wars. All right, the kings of the north and the kings of the south. Okay, so continuing on, it says, "And not to his posterity." Right, so those 4 generals, they are the ones who put the crowns on their head, and not his posterity, not his actual line being continued. His son was murdered, I believe. It says, "Nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom should be plucked up, even for the others besides those. And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes shall he be strong above him, and have dominion, and his dominion should be a great dominion." Now that first king of the south that is speaking of is Ptolemy the First. Okay, Ptolemy the First. He was a consort with Alexander. He requested Egypt. Egypt wasn't the biggest land, but it was stable and it had a rich history. So he figured that he can go there and he can basically expand. He could expand from there. It's fertile land. So that's the reason why he chose that land. And it says that one shall be strong, one of his it said that he should be strong, and one of his princes and shall be strong above him, which is speaking about his son Ptolemy the Second, Philadelphus. Okay, so we are we're getting into Ptolemy the First. There's not really a lot to say about him. Like I said, I pretty much gave his information. He did fight in the war of the 4 Diadici, which is basically all of them trying to carve out their lands where they're going to be. Ptolemy, he had Egypt. The Seleucids, they had Syria and everything east of there. Cassander cut out his little area, which I believe he got Macedonia, and Lysimachus, he had the northwest region in the Mediterranean. Okay. Um, but going back to Philadelphus, they called him Philadelphus because he he was a lover of his sister, and that's a recurring role with dealing with these Ptolemies. All right, they had they had the blood tight, you know, like what's those guys? The Hepburns, I believe they were called. Let me look it up. The Hep. Ah, come on. It was in Spain, I believe. I believe it was the Habsburg, the Habsburgs. Yep. Yeah. So they it was basically a family back in Spain that did a lot of inbreeding. You know, sorry for going off course right there. Um, Getting back to the scriptures. So it says he was strong above him, going into Philadelphia's, who fought in the first Syrian war and actually the second Syrian war as well. So he was willing to get down for his. In the first Syrian war, let's go through it. It says probably a response to the alliance with Magus, which was his like adopted half brother. Ptolemy declared war on Antiochus I in 274 BC by invading the Seleucid Syria. After some initial success, Ptolemy forces were defeated in battle by Antiochus and forced to retreat back to Egypt. Invasion was imminent, and Ptolemy and Arsinoe spent the winter reinforcing defenses in the eastern delta. However, the expected Seleucid Empire invasion never took place. Um, so they thought that they were going to invade, but they never really did. All right. So then, that took place between 274 and 271 BC. And then, as I said, in 260 BC to 253 BC, you have the Second Syrian War. Okay, so Ptolemy again. He's well. Before we go into the second one, let's go to because he fought Antiochus the First. So let's go get a little information on Antiochus the First. Um, he again was let me see, Slovakia. I thought I had this up. It was a lot of inmarrying. He ended up marrying his stepmother. All right, here we go. So at the end of 275 BC, the question of Celesyria, which had been open between the houses of Seleucus and Ptolemy since the partition of 301, led to hostilities. That's how the first Syrian war started. It was, who's going to take this land? All right, it says it had been continuously in Ptolemaic occupation, but the House of Seleucus maintained its claim. War did not materially change the outlines of the two kingdoms, though the frontier cities like Damascus and the coast districts of Asia Minor might change hands. So, that's basically how the first Syrian War started, and that's the first Syrian War. So going on to the second Syrian War, which broke out around 260 BC, um, once more between Ptolemy II and the Seleucid realm, now ruled by Antiochus II. All right, which is his name is Theos. All right, it says this the cause of this war seems to have been the two kings competing in claims against cities in Asia Minor, particularly uh, Miletus and Ephesus. Its outbreak seemed to be connected to the revolt of Ptolemy's co-regent Ptolemy, who had been leading the Ptolemaic naval forces against Antigonus II. The younger Ptolemy and his associate took control of the Ptolemaic territories in Western Asia Minor in the Aegean Sea. Antiochus II took advantage of this upset to declare war on Ptolemy II, and he was joined by the Rhodians. So now everybody, they're kind of like ganging up to go against Ptolemy. Okay. Let me grab Antiochus II. It says that he inherited lasting tensions with the Ptolemaic Egypt and soon inflated the Second Syrian War in an alliance with Antigonus II and the Antigonid dynasty. So the war was largely fought along the coast of Asia Minor and conflated with the constant intrigues of petty deposits and relentless city-states in Asia Minor. Antiochus II made some gains in Asia Minor and acquired direct access to the Aegean Sea by capturing Miletus and Ephesus. So it's being consistent with what was said in the other one. So I got this. This is from livingus.org. Going through all the different Syrian wars. We're in the second one right now. It says in 260 you had the ascension of Antiochus II, who wanted revenge for the first Syrian war and attacked Ptolemy II Philadelphus. In 59, that's when Ptolemy the son revolts. It says Antiochus finds an ally in Antigonus II, which we read. Moving down, because this is the point that I really wanted to get. In 253, there was peace with Antiochus II Theos, who repudiates his wife Laodice and marries the daughter of Ptolemy, Bernice. So that's how the second Syrian war ended. All right. There was basically Ptolemy gave his daughter Bernice to Antiochus, and Antiochus divorced his wife Laodice. But it says it in the scriptures, so we're going to keep reading, going back to Daniel's chapter 11 and verse 6. It says, and in the years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north and make an agreement. Okay, that's that. The king of the south being Ptolemy, giving his daughter to the king of the north, which was Antiochus II. Okay, it says, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. Right, so we'll go into Ptolemy II and what happened after that, which then caused the Third Syrian War. So let me pull this up here. All right, so in early July of 246, Antiochus II Theos dies, leaving a confused dynastic situation. All right, from his first marriage, Laodice. Matter of fact, let me back it up real quick before I get this. Let's get Bernice. Here we go. So this is Bernice from Wikipedia. When you look her up, it says the daughter of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, of his first wife Arsinoe I of Egypt, around 252 BC, following the peace agreement of 253 BC between Antiochus and Ptolemy to end the Second Syrian War. She married the Seleucid monarch Antiochus II Theos, who divorced his wife Laodice and transferred the succession to Bernice's children. So in 246 BC, when Ptolemy died, okay, that's an important part, because now Ptolemy is dead. Ptolemy II Philadelphus. Antiochus II took up again with his first wife, Laodice. So he put Bernice away and took Laodice to be his wife again. All right, it says, Antiochus died shortly thereafter. Many suspect from poisoning from Laodice. So she felt some type of way. So she poisoned him basically to take the power seat. All right. It says Queen Bernice claimed the regency for her infant son Antiochus. However, she and her son were both killed by Laodice. Right. So Bernice, she got killed by Laodice because why? She has an heir, and they don't want any other claim to the kingdom. So really, if anyone's a fan of Game of Thrones, they have a new series coming out, and it's loosely kind of based on this, with one family having a claim to the throne and the heir, and you have another woman that has a claim to the throne and the heir, and they go at it with each other. So that's basically where they got the concept for that. It says Bernice's brother Ptolemy III Euergetes succeeded their father and set up to avenge his sister's murder by invading Syria and having Laodice killed. It says this is mentioned in the book of Daniel 11:6, which that's where we're at. Okay. I'll read verse 6 again. It says, and at the end of the years, they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter, okay, Bernice, of the south shall come to the king of the north, Antiochus II, to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of the arm. They're going to be killed. Neither shall he stand, nor his arm, the child, being killed as well, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, okay, and he that begat her, speaking of Ptolemy the second, and he that strengthened her, and he that strengthened her in these times, okay, but out of a branch of her own roots shall one stand up in his estate, which is Ptolemy III, which wanted revenge for his sister being killed, which is the start of the Third Syrian War. It says, which shall come up with an army and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north and shall deal against them and shall prevail. So let's go into Ptolemy III. In the Third Syrian War, this is from Wikipedia, it says, on July 246 BC, Antiochus II, king of the Seleucid Empire, died suddenly by his first wife, Laodice I. Antiochus II had a son, Seleucus II, who was about 19 years old in 246 BC. However, in 253 BC, he had agreed to repudiate Laodice and marry Ptolemy's sister, Ptolemy III's sister, Bernice. Antiochus II and Bernice had a son named Antiochus, who was still an infant when his father died. All right, that's basically everything we just read. Let me see. It says, rather than accept defeat at the face of a setback, Ptolemy III continued his campaign through Syria and into Mesopotamia, where he conquered Babylon at the end of 246 or the beginning of 245 BC. In light of his success, he may have been crowned the great king of Asia. In early 245 BC, he established a governor in the land. He established a governor in the land on the other side of the Euphrates, indicating an intention to permanently incorporate the region to the Ptolemaic Empire. So he was trying to set things up. Okay, he wasn't playing. Let me see if there's anything else. All right, so that's Ptolemy the Third. Reading on in Daniel's 11 and 8, it says, "And he shall also carry captives into Egypt, their gods with their princes, and with the precious vessels of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north." Right, so this is speaking of Seleucus II, which it mentions Seleucus II. So we'll go into him and his defeat in the Third Syrian War. It says Seleucus managed to maintain himself in the interior of Asia Minor and made arrangements to shore up his power there. One of his sisters married Mithridates II of Pontus. Another married Aphrodite III of Cappadocia, and he married his aunt Laodice II, by whom he had 5 children, including Antiochus, Seleucus III, Cyrenius, and Antiochus III, or Antiochus the Great. So, like I said, these demons were intermarrying with, family, all kinds of, nastiness, like they pit bulls or something. But let me see. It says Ptolemy III returned to Egypt in 245 BC, reputedly taking with him 40,000 tons of gold and the statues of Egyptian gods, which had been looted centuries before by the Persians. Going back, it says, "And he also carried captives into Egypt their gods and their princes, and with their precious vessels of silver and gold, and he continued more years than the king of the north." So he sacked their temples, he sacked everything, took everything, went back to Egypt, and he ended up living, I believe, like 4 or 5 years. Scholars debate whether it was 4 or 5 years more than Seleucus II, who was actually in exile at the time. Okay. So, going into verse 9. "So the king of the south shall," let me go to this next page. Bear with me. "So the king of the south shall come up into his kingdom and shall return to his own land." All right, now we're talking about Philopator. Because we're going into the next war. We're going into the 4th war now. Verse 10, it says, "But his son shall be stirred up, and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overthrow," it's like an overflow, "and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress." All right, so this is speaking about, it says, but his son shall be stirred up. It's the sons of Seleucus the second, who was defeated in the last Syrian war. So he had 2 sons. His sons being, as we read, Seleucus the Third, which was called Cyrenius, and Antiochus the Great, Antiochus the Third. All right, so Seleucus the Third, he had a very small role. It's like it says Seleucus the Third. He reigned from 243 BC to 225. It's like it. He ruled from 225, December of 225 BC to about April or June of 223 BC. So that's really all it gave, for him. He he had a 2 year run, and then you know, Antiochus the Great took over. All right, and which was the devil in itself. All right, going into okay, um, right. So going into the Third Syrian War, it says it's like we're in the Fourth Syrian War. So this is Ptolemy the Fourth, Philopator. He succeeds his father between it was in February of 222. All right, many relatives are killed, including his mother and his ministers, or by his ministers, Ethelcletes and Sobiasis. All right, so on between April and June 222, it says Antiochus III comes to power, and in the Seleucid Empire, and marries Laodice III. So now we have Ptolemy the Fourth and Antiochus the Third, Antiochus the Great. You know, um, in 221, the first skirmishes of the Fourth Syrian War start. Antiochus attacks the Ptolemaic possessions in Syria, but is forced to suppress the revolt of the Molian and Media and Persis first. So he started the war, but it was a skirmish, in other parts of his land, so he had to go put those fires out. All right, so that's when in 220 Ptolemy married his sister Arsinoe the Third, and then that's when it was a full outbreak in 219 of the Fourth Syrian War. It says Antiochus reconquered Seleucia, the port of Antioch, which had been conquered by Ptolemy the Third in the Third Syrian War, and proceeded south to capture Tyre. All right, Ptolemy's army defeats the Seleucid army at Raphia, with the army that consists partly of native Egyptian soldiers. And that battle of Raphia was one of the major battles. Um, and we're going to get to that here in the scriptures. Before we get to it in the scriptures, let me make sure. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this is on Antiochus III. It says the campaigns of 219 BC and 218 BC carried the Seleucid armies almost to the confines of the Ptolemaic kingdom. But in 217 BC, Ptolemy IV defeated Antiochus at the Battle of Raphia. This defeat nullified all of Antiochus' successes and compelled him to withdraw north of Lebanon. In 216 BC, his armies marched west to Anatolia to suppress the local rebellion led by Antiochus' own cousin Archelaus. All right, so let's get into this battle of Raphia, because, like I said, that was a huge battle. And let me grab the scripture real quick. It says, Daniel 11:11. It says, "And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with them, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand." All right, so going into the Fourth Syrian War, in this battle of Raphia. All right, you had the Seleucid army. Give me a second, because I had all the number of the forces. Just got to find out which one I had it on. Baba Washaf, if you'll bear with me. Hey, come on. Maybe it was in the Battle of Raphia. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here it is. It says, according to Polybius, Ptolemy had 70,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry, and 73 war elephants. Antiochus had 62,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, and 102 elephants. All right, going back up to the top, it says the Battle of Raphia, known as the Battle of Gaza, was the battle fought on the 22nd of June, 217 BC, near modern Rafah, between the Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire. It was one of the largest battles of the Hellenistic kingdom and was one of the largest battles in the ancient world. The battle was waged to determine the sovereignty of Syria. So let's go back to the scriptures. As it said in Daniel's 11:11, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with them, even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude, because it was the biggest battle in history at that point in time. You know, that many soldiers, 60,000 over here, 70,000 over here, and they had the war elephants, and it was crazy. The scriptures say every battle of the warriors with confused noise. You can imagine, the sounds. You got elephants, you got people dying, all the swords. Man, it had to be a sight to see. Verse 12 says, and when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many tens of thousands, but he shall not be strengthened by it. Right, so Ptolemy ended up winning this war. Going to the battle. It says, according to Polybius, the Seleucids suffered a little under 10,000 infantry dead, about 300 horse, and 5 elephants, and 4,000 men were taken prisoner. The Ptolemaic losses were 15,000, or 1,500 infantry, 700 horse, and 16 elephants. Most of Ptolemy's elephants were captured by the Seleucids. So, there was a lot more death on the Seleucid side than it was the Ptolemaic side. All right. But it says in verse 12, it says, and when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up. All right. So, I'll read the rest. It says, his heart shall be lifted up because he, don't do it. His heart, he said that his heart should be lifted up because he kind of rested on his laurels. He could have took Antiochus the Great out at that point, but he decided not to, and he kind of, got fat off the land, and he let Antiochus escape, and then that's when Antiochus started building himself back up. All right, it says, and he was cast down. He cast down many 10,000s. But he should not be strengthened by it. So, right, he didn't take advantage of the situation. He wasn't strengthened by the situation. For the king of the north shall return and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. Right, so this is the start of the 5th Syrian war. Antiochus the Third, he wasn't playing. So let's pull up the 5th Syrian war. All right, so it was 205 to 204 BC. The Seleucid king Antiochus the Third and the Macedonian king Philip the Fifth, knowing that a dynastic crisis is approaching approaching in the Ptolemaic Empire, agreed to divide its possessions outside of Africa and revolt of Horwinifer in Egypt. So basically, you had these two dudes, Philip V of Macedonia, and Antiochus III. They teamed up to want to like take over everything outside of Egypt. But this is also where Rome comes into play. So Rome is like, no, we're not gonna let y'all do that. Because remember, Rome and Egypt had that treaty, and Rome is getting. My computer's gonna want to restart here in about 7 minutes. So Rome is getting the majority of its food from Egypt. So it's like, we're not gonna let y'all just do that. All right. That's the beginning of the Fifth Syrian War. Let me see. So you had these two dudes, Antiochus III and Philip V, and they started conquering all the islands in the Aegean Sea, the Mediterranean Sea. They started taking over, and then that's when it says in 201, Rome is alarmed and demands that Philip halts his aggression. Like, hey, hold on, buddy. You're gonna be dealing with Rome here in a second. And Rome is not the vast Roman Empire at that time, but it was still a powerhouse at that time. All right, so you really didn't want to mess with Rome. Let me see. So in May of 202, that's when the Fifth Syrian War broke out. Or it says Philip expels the Ptolemaic garrisons from the Aegean Sea, which results in a conflict with Pergamon and Rhodes. Okay. In 199 to 197, Antiochus cancels his invasion of Egypt and instead taxed Ptolemaic possessions in Cilicia. All right, because like I said, they were dealing with Rome now, and it's a lot more consequences and repercussions. Going back to the scriptures, what are we in? 13, verse 13. It says, "For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches." Right, so those two teamed up, and they were going to bring their forces together to come back and get Syria, or not Saki, get Ptolemy. It says, "And in those times shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but shall fail." All right, and when you just looking on the map, you have Egypt in the south, and then you have the coastline, and like this right here is Syria, but right here it's like right here. All right, when you look, if this is Egypt, right here coming up the coast, you have Israel. So when they're trying to come north, they got to go through Israel. When they're trying to come south, they got to go through Israel. So the whole time we stuck between a rock and a hard place, and we're going through hell. All right, this is ongoing conflicts. We're in the fifth war. All right, it says, so the king of the north, verse 15. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the armies of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, Jerusalem, which is by his hand, and shall be consumed. Right, so they were, they were fucking us up, for lack of a better term, in the meantime. Verse 17, he also shall set his face to enter with strength of his whole kingdom, and the upright ones with them. Thus shall he do, and he shall give to him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. All right, so this is, like I said, this is the 5th Syrian war that we're in. Pull that up real quick. And in 195, there was peace between Antiochus III and Ptolemy. He actually announced that he was going to marry Antiochus' daughter, Cleopatra of Syria. Okay, and accepts the loss of all possessions outside of Egypt, except for Cyprus and Cyrenia. Okay, so as we just read in the scripture, it says, "That shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women." So Antiochus, as a token of peace, gave his daughter Cleopatra the first, proving that Cleopatra is an Edomite from the Seleucid line, giving her to another Edomite, Ptolemy Philopator, which is another Greek, okay, for a marriage, okay, to strengthen the two families, all right, to say, all right, we're going to pull all this beef behind us, all right. So, Slaki, he gave it to Ptolemy the fifth, which is Epiphanes, okay. Let me go a little bit into him because I don't believe I did. Since the defeat by Ptolemy the Fourth in the 4th Syrian War in 217 BC, Antiochus III had been waiting on an opportunity to avenge himself, and he had begun seizing the Ptolemaic territory western of Asia Minor. I think I read all that. Yeah, I read that. And that was Ptolemy the Fifth, known as Epiphanes. Okay, verse 18. It says, "For this shall he turn his face to the isles, and shall take many, but a prince of his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon them." So as I said, you had Antiochus III and Philip V. They were taking all the isles, and then they were told to cease by Rome.